Hey guys, just quickly before we get into this video, I'm just filming this really quickly on my phone because we've reached 10,000 subscribers and that's a little bit crazy, and I'm so happy and excited, and I'm really grateful that you guys like my videos and that you like hearing me talk about books and writing. So a massive thank you to everyone who subscribed, and in order to celebrate I want to do two things. So first of all, I would love to do a Q&A, so please ask me questions about books, writing, or about my life. Obviously please be reasonable, but leave them in the comments below or on Twitter. I will put my username up here if that's easier for you. I will compile a list of questions both from YouTube and from Twitter and then make a video answering your questions. And the second thing I wanted to celebrate is to do a giveaway, but more info will be in the Q&A video that I'll film answering your questions. So massive thank you again. I'm so grateful, and I'm just so happy to be a part of this community. It's awesome. And now let's get on with the actual video for today. Hey everyone, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to do a tag that's been going around lately. It's kind of an older tag, but this time of the year everyone seems to be doing it and I wanted to partake, and that is the mid-year book freakout tag. So this tag is kind of looking at all of the books that you've read up until this point, so you know, half the year, and analyze what you liked and what you didn't like. Just a few stats before I start, because stats are always fun. As of now, I have read 24 books in 2018 and my goal is 40. So I usually read around 45 to 50 books, but I always set my goal lower and try to still read more. Usually because I read a lot of big fat fantasy books and those tend to take longer to read. Obviously there were a lot longer books. So sometimes I read a bit less, but in general I do try to read more than my goal on Goodreads. Let's get started with the questions. So question number one is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2018? I actually have quite a few. Honestly, out of the 24 books that I've read, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I've actually read quite a few gems, or quite a few books that have become some of my favorites. So some of my favorite books that I've read in 2018 so far. First one is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This was so good. I devoured this, and at the same time I wanted it to last forever. I loved every single word of it, and I would highly recommend this one. Another one is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This was an awesome adventure story set around the 19th century about a guy and his friend and his sister going on a tour of the continent, so a tour of Europe. And a lot of hilarity ensued, and I was so pleasantly surprised about this book, but I'll talk about it a bit more in just a bit. Then a book I've already mentioned on this channel that I really loved is This Song Will Save Your Life by Layla Sales. This is one of my now favorite contemporary novels, and it just really spoke to me, I guess. And then a non-fiction book that I devoured and adored is In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, and this was heart-wrenching but beautiful. I would reread it again and again if it wouldn't be so damn sad, but I absolutely love this book. So the second question is, what is the best sequel you've read so far in 2018? So for this question I have volume 2 of Orange. This is a manga and this is the second volume, obviously, so it's a sequel. And I love the series. This is the entire series. It's only 2 volumes, so if you ever want to get into manga or try it out, I would highly recommend Orange. It's super fun. Very lighthearted, but also just really well written. And then the second sequel I really liked this year so far is Legion Skin Deep. I'll insert a picture here. This is by Brandon Sanderson, and this is one of his most famous novellas. I'll make an entire separate video on the best novellas that I've read, because I do read quite a bit, and honestly a lot of them are by Brandon Sanderson. He writes a lot of novellas and they are all really good, but Legion and the sequel to Legion are definitely one of his best novellas and one of his best works in general. The next question is a new release you haven't read yet but really want to. I'll have to go with The Poppy War by R.F. Kwang. This is a new fantasy novel that I've heard so many great things about. Everyone is kind of raving about it at the moment, and it does sound fantastic. Asian-inspired fantasy, which is something that I'm very interested in because it's something that I'm writing myself, and I love when there's more fantasy inspired by non-Western history, because you see a lot of medieval Europe inspired fantasy, but you don't see a lot of medieval Asia inspired fantasy or any other parts of the world. So I'm super excited when some of those come out, and this is supposed to be really, really good. Obviously haven't read it yet, but I've heard amazing things and I really, really want to read it. Next question is most anticipated release for the second half of 2018, and I'll have to go with Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, the one and only Brandon Sanderson. Yes, he is coming out with another book, as if he doesn't have enough books already. This man, I don't understand how he is so prolific. It's kind of fascinating and also kind of scary. But this is supposed to be a YA sci-fi novel, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a series, but the cover looks awesome. I love Brandon Sanderson. I will read anything he will ever write, and so obviously I am very excited about this release, and I'm hoping to pick it up and read it in 2018. We'll see if that happens, but yeah, I'm very excited. It looks really, really good. Next question is, what is your biggest disappointment of 2018 so far? For this, I'm gonna have to go with When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. I kind of had high hopes for this book, specifically because it focuses on a girl who's really into web development, and she goes to a web development camp. So she goes to a coding camp, and I don't know how many of you know this, but I am a developer as my main job. My full-time job is I'm a front-end developer, and I was kind of hoping that it would go deeper into that aspect of the book, because it's quite a big selling point, and that was definitely a huge selling point for me personally. But I was just left disappointed because not a lot about that, and it's much more about the romance between the main character and the love interest, and that was cute and it was really well done and it was great, but I just felt like it completely skipped over the web development parts, and the few bits that it did talk about were so incredibly generic. I didn't really get the sense that the character actually knew anything about web development. I assume there was a reason behind this. I assume maybe the author did not want to include, you know, a lot of detail because of fear of, I don't know, alienating readers who are not familiar with coding. But I just would have liked something, you know, because it really just felt like some aspect that was just plastered on and then kind of forgotten about, you know, in favor of the romance. And I really was hoping that it would be a lot more about her coding than it actually was. So yeah, it's still a really cute book, but that aspect for me kind of ruined it. The next question is, what is your biggest surprise of 2018 so far? That will have to go to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I adored this book, and honestly, I wasn't expecting to. I don't really know what I was expecting, to be honest. This was really hyped. What sold it for me initially was, you know, historical fiction, but YA, and also some LGBTQ in there, and that's kind of what I was expecting going into it, and that's definitely what I got, but I also got so much more. I love this. This was so much fun, and I adored the plot of it. This is the kind of adventure story that I love to read, and I love to write, and I want to write more of. So this was definitely a surprise, but a really good surprise, and I would really recommend this book. Next question is favorite new author. And in terms of writing style and the kind of atmosphere that this author created, I'm really interested in reading more about Donna Tartt, the author of The Secret History. I know she has another book called The Golden Finch, which is really popular, I think even more popular than this one. I loved the writing in this so much. I know I'm gonna love the other one, no matter what it's about. I also love the plot in this, but I just feel like she managed to create such a beautiful atmosphere, and that's really what drew me in and what caught me from the first few pages. I adored her writing style, and so I'm really excited to read more of her work. I think she has 2 more that I can read. So yeah, in any case, I really adored her writing, and she's definitely one of my new favorite authors. Next question is newest fictional crush. Now, I don't tend to get literature crushes so much these days. Sometimes it happens, but the closest that I can think of so far in 2018 is Percy from this book. I think just because of the way the main character talks about him and describes him and their interactions, I also kind of fell in love with Percy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Percy from The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. And then do you have a newest favorite character? And again, I'm gonna have to go with this book. God damn it, this book. Felicity. Yes, Felicity from this book. She was such an awesome character. Such a badass, and especially for the time period that this was written in. It's so good, and I'm so happy that the sequel of it follows Felicity, who is one of my new favorite characters. So I cannot wait to follow her adventure later this year. So yes, Felicity. I'll also mention two other characters briefly, but that is Wax and Wayne from Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This is the continuation of the Mistborn series. So there was the first trilogy, and this is part of the second trilogy, and it goes on. But I absolutely loved these two characters just interacting together. I thought they were so much fun. So definitely Wax and Wayne are also some of my newest favorite characters. Next question is to name a book that made you cry. I very, very rarely cry while reading books. I don't actually think I've ever cried properly reading a book. But that being said, the closest thing I got is by reading In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. Again, I adore this book, but it is heart-wrenching, and oh man, I don't even know what to say about it. I don't really want to say a lot about it, just read it. The next question is to name a book that made you happy. Basically all of the ones that I've already mentioned, but just to keep it a little more interesting, I'll also mention All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is also a novella, and also now one of my favorite novellas, and this was so much fun. Really, really cool. So I really recommend this novella if, again, you want something short but really fun. It made me quite happy. Next question is your favorite book to movie adaptation that you've watched so far this year. And I'm sad to say I have not actually watched any book to movie adaptation this year. I still have yet to see Love, Simon, which is the movie adaptation to Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, which I love. I adore that book. And the movie has been getting good reviews, so I definitely need to see it. I just haven't got around to it, so I can't really say anything for this question. So moving on. Second to last question is, what is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year? I've shown this one before, but it definitely has to be The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. Just look at this beauty of a book. I don't know, there's just something about black and red, first of all, that kind of aesthetic that is very pleasing to my emo heart. Also the black edges just make me really, really happy. Okay, and the last question of this tag is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I actually really only have one that I will be very upset if I don't get to by the end of the year, and that is Oathbringer, the third book in the Stormlight Archive series that I have yet to buy because the edition that I need to match the editions of these books right here is not out until October of this year, so like a year after the book actually released. So yes, I am pretty behind on that series, but the next one won't come out for a long time, so I don't feel that bad. But I definitely need to read Oathbringer. And then probably the sequel to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue that I've already mentioned, that's also coming out around the end of the year, so I want to read that. And also the one I've already mentioned, Skyward by Brandon Sanderson again. So yeah, Sanderson. Just all of the Sanderson. But that's it, guys. This was my mid-year book freakout tag. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know in the comments below what books surprised you so far this year. You know, what was your favorite book you've read so far? What was the least favorite you've read so far? You don't have to answer all of these questions, obviously, but just let me know some of your highlights. I'm definitely excited about the second half of the year, reading-wise, and what new gems I'll discover. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye!